He will speak later this evening. Hard to imagine Trump has not had a rally since that announcement. Walz and Harris have been everywhere, and now they're in Glendale, Arizona. Live pictures there. The warm-up act is well underway for their fourth joint appearance since Tuesday. They will take the stage in about an hour. The Harris-Walz Battleground State Blitz continues tomorrow. They're in Las Vegas, and despite all the momentum, all of the money, all of the movement in the polls, and all of that has been significant, the Harris-Walz campaign still has one major hurdle before them, and this could derail them. The pro-Palestine wing of the Democratic Party is souring on them quickly, very quickly. Harris's response to protesters during a rally in Detroit did not help.
He intends to surrender our fight against the climate crisis, and he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that. Otherwise, I'm speaking.
Now, part of the crowd roared, "We welcome you to the fairest show on television." That soundbite should absolutely terrify the Harris campaign. And now there is a new plan to save Chicago, save the DNC for Kamala Harris. Live pictures of the United Center, which plays host to the DNC in just 10 days. Unless Israel and Hamas reach a ceasefire deal in the next week, the convention will be clouded by the threat of massive pro-Palestine, even pro-Hamas protests. It is a split screen that Democrats do not want to see during their candidate's big week. By split screen, we mean this. Riots like they faced in 1968 when there was the convention in Chicago. Just imagine if these people had Hamas flags. Those were anti-Vietnam protests. They led to violent clashes between young Americans and the police. Democrats want nothing more than to avoid those pictures on the screen while Kamala Harris speaks, or worse, perhaps, while Josh Shapiro, the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, who was passed over for the vice presidential nod, speaks. It'd be terrible for Democrats. So there's a last-ditch effort to reach a deal, and Joe Biden is twisting arms. The United States, Egypt, and Qatar are hosting a summit on Thursday. That leaves just 4 days for them to get a deal before the convention starts. So call me cynical, that's fine. I lived in the Middle East for 4 years. After that, you do not believe in coincidences of timing. The interruption in Detroit proves that picking Walz, that was not enough to placate the pro-Palestinian wing of the Democratic Party. Call it the Hamas-adjacent wing. Well, there's more reporting on this. This is from Mother Jones, hardly a right-wing outlet. Uncommitted voters had hope for Harris's Gaza policy. It is fading. So these folks are getting more and more angry. At the announcement of Harris's candidacy, the uncommitted movement hoped that Harris would take a less hardline approach to supplying Israel with weapons. But that policy change has not been forthcoming. A central demand from the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine people is an Israel arms embargo. Now, Kamala Harris hasn't come out and talked about this herself. To be fair, she hasn't really talked about any policy herself. But her national security advisor has said she does not support an arms embargo. So in that sense, a ceasefire may not even be enough to prevent mass protests and a split screen of Vice President Harris's acceptance speech at the DNC and demonstrations like this one we saw in Washington, D.C. last month. They were burning American flags, Hamas flags flying all over the place. On the other hand, for Harris, who now faces, well, a real general election fight, publicly disavowing their demands and speaking to middle America who wants to stand by Israel, well, that could cost whatever of the progressive left Harris has left. We begin tonight with Kurt Bardella, Democratic strategist, NewsNation contributor. My friend, it is good to see you. Is this a real concern?
I don't think that it is, because remember, if you're going to have this conversation and if you are concerned about the electoral implications, well, there has to be a who's the other person that the pro-Palestinians who may not be happy with the Harris or the Biden-Harris agenda on this, like, who are they going to turn to? Donald Trump? That's not going to happen. The Republican Party? That's not really an option. And so while they might express their frustration and protest certain things, I don't buy that they're going to somehow be so upset with Kamala Harris that they're going to vote for Donald Trump.
Right. Okay. So that's the uncommitted movement. That was the folks who voted uncommitted rather than for Joe Biden in the primary back when there were primaries and votes. Who remembers that time? And it was notable, right? 13% in Michigan, 19% in Minnesota, 15% in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, 5.6%. It may not be if those folks vote for Donald Trump. I think you're right. Kamala Harris is right. Who are you going to vote for? It is if, number one, they stay home. But number two, if there are protests at the DNC and you get that split screen of Kamala Harris talking and people wearing Hamas flags, that doesn't play well with suburban America.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think we have to acknowledge there are going to be some protests from, the anti-Israel side of this. That's what we've seen at every event, really across the political spectrum at this point, that they're not going away. And I think that the best thing that could happen to address that is some sort of ceasefire agreement, which obviously the Biden-Harris administration is working towards right now. We'll see if that actually translates to anything or if it's more of just a Hail Mary, last-ditch effort, as you kind of alluded to in your open. It's not a great split screen.
Right, but the ceasefire would be something. It's something that, it'd be a huge win for Joe Biden. Charlie Cook, political analyst, founder of the Cook Political Report, with us now. You all moved a couple of states now into the toss-up category, a couple of the swing states. Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia had been leaning towards Donald Trump. Now they are toss-ups. We put up the map to 270 there. Given how much has changed and how rapidly it has changed in a couple of weeks, how long really do we need to watch this before we can say what direction the race is headed in?
I'd say probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning on election night. This is going to be, look, the race had gotten away from Democrats. And, before the debate, Biden was down to like a 1 in 3 chance. After the debate, it was practically non-existent. This is now a race. It's very, very, very competitive. I mean, there are things that are facing, might give Trump a tiny bit of an edge, but it's a very competitive race. I'm not with the newsletter anymore, but, it's the six classic swing states or toss-ups, the Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and then the Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada. And it's, this one, it's going to be really, really close. And I would not at all be surprised to see Harris win the popular vote, but it's the electoral college vote that matters because the popular vote, $5 will get you a cup of coffee. But I agree exactly with what Kurt said a minute ago, that where are these people going to go? And within the Democratic Party, there is a unity in the Democratic Party that we haven't seen in a good while. And as strongly as some people feel about the situation in between Israel and Hamas and Palestine, that's going to be a pimple in the rear end of an elephant in terms of the scheme of where the Democratic right now. I think it's a lot of hot air.
I'm just thinking about the elephant. Kamala Harris's stump speech.
I summed it up.
We appreciate that. Kamala Harris's stump speech seems to have almost the exact same lines time and time again. Take a listen.
We are not going back because ours is a fight for the future. And it is a fight for freedom. So Pennsylvania, ours is a fight for the future of the middle class, and it is a fight for freedom. We cannot go back. Ours has to be a fight for the future and a fight for freedom. We're not going back. Our fight is a fight for the future, and it is a fight for freedom.
Kurt, earned media is a great thing, and Kamala Harris has been getting it because people have been taking her rallies. The cable news networks have, some of the networks have. It was new, it was interesting, it was different. But now it's the same old stump speech. And what is Democrats' plan once the sugar high of, as Charlie pointed out, this new united feeling on the progressive left and into the mainstream of the Democratic Party, when all y'all are just talking to each other rather than watching Kamala Harris get free airtime on all the cable nets?
Well, I think that those themes, we're not going back, future and freedom, that's exactly what you're going to hear from now until November. It's called message discipline. And I think there are a lot of my friends and fellow Republican consultants who watch that and just dream of having a top of the ticket that could actually duplicate that type of consistency and continuity in his messaging. They would love for that to happen. Every strategist we talk to says,
well played, my friend.
Donald Trump could stay on message, if that, like, that is
Kurt,
exactly that's
Kurt,
Democrats
when someone
in array
says
right there.
When someone says well played, that's when you just stop.
Take the win.
Right, you should take the win. Charlie, to that point though, it's one thing to say these lines, freedom, joy, we're not going back at a rally. This election is going to be decided by somewhere between 10 and 50,000 people in the states that you line up. How much do those people vote on the I'm trying to not be pejorative when I say this. How much do those people vote on the hypothetical language and the aspirational language versus, hey, this is how my pocketbook feels now versus when Trump was in 4 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, these are people that they don't love or hate Donald Trump. They don't love or hate Kamala Harris or Joe Biden for that matter. But they're people that they're not wringing their hands on the future of democracy. It's how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my mortgage? Fill up the grocery cart? That's what they're thinking about. And they may not like Donald Trump and the way he behaves, but on the other hand, they're not happy with where things are right now. And it's this push-pull that's going on that they're, kind of having to deal with. But, I think for, the energy, the excitement levels in the Democratic Party has pulled them back into the hunt. But at the end of the day, it's still 6 tough states, and it's still a cost of living that's 20% higher than it was, 4 years ago. And that's what makes this race so hard. But at least Democrats are in the hunt. And, a month ago.
Look, it's all of a sudden it's interesting and something to talk about. Kurt, is there any discussion among you and your Democratic consultant buddies when you all get together and do a happy dance because of how well things have been going for the past 18 days, the reality that things do change? Just ask Democrats who are Republicans who, after the DNC, were high on their own supply as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that Democrats realizing, hey, this race is going to get tighter. As tight as it is right now, as within the margin of error it is, it's going to get even closer and narrower. And what we're talking about today is probably not what we're going to be talking about in 30 or 45 or 60 days. This race is going to have a lot of different turns and twists and contours. I do think that the one thing that Democrats say a lot is what we do know for sure is that Donald Trump is incapable of staying on message. And every time he goes off on a riff or starts insulting constituencies, that's going to drive the people that he needs to win into our arms.
Charlie, is it that simple?
Yeah, no, I think, Kamala Harris has done a terrific transition, rollout. Everything's going well. Ultimately, I think she could do everything perfectly and not win. I think this is a race where it's hard for her to win, or put it differently, it's more likely that Trump loses it than Kamala Harris wins it. And sort of increasingly irrational behavior and just sounding like, gosh, is he losing it? That's how this race goes.
The age question is now on the table for Donald Trump. And Charlie, I'll put it in a slightly different way, which is never underestimate Republicans' ability to screw things up. Oh, you see, I even got a laugh out of Bardella. Gentlemen, it's good to see both of you. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too, my friend.
All right, live look at Trump's upcoming rally. It's in Montana. It's his first event in a week in Montana. Does he have the energy to literally race, till November? Kamala Harris and her new running mate will read, if we know, the same stump speech from the same teleprompter in Arizona, how keeping Harris on prompter, and she has done a magnificent job of it, how that denies Democrats their best attack dog. Donald Trump takes the stage in Montana, of all places, tonight. It is his first rally in a week. He's way ahead in the state of Montana with a whopping 4 electoral college votes. It is inexplicable why he is there. And so far, there are no plans for him to visit any of the 7 swing states that will decide the election, including Pennsylvania with 19 electoral college votes, or Arizona with 11, Nevada with 6. Meanwhile, Trump has been laying relatively low. Harris held a rally almost every day this week and will continue on into the weekend. Trump explained his relatively light schedule yesterday.
Because I'm leading by a lot and because I'm letting their convention go through, and I am campaigning a lot. After their convention, and I'm going out to certain places to help certain senators get elected, not even for me.
With us now, former Congressman from Georgia, Doug Collins. Good to see you again, sir. Welcome back to the program. I guess Donald Trump is looking at different polls than everybody else. It is perplexing to me why you would be ceding all of this white space over the past 2 weeks to Kamala Harris and now Tim Walz.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's interesting, and given the fact of the meetings before and things that we were seeing. I mean, he was in Atlanta, he was in Georgia last Saturday, he's in Montana, which is interesting. But I think it's also a strategic play. Remember, one of the things that's often said about Donald Trump is he doesn't, it's only about his campaign and the campaign for presidency. This is a true example of him going out realizing that if he wins the presidency, like we plans on doing in November, he's got to have the Senate. And that Montana race with Tester and Sheehy is a very key part of that.
Are you trying to spin me by telling me that he's so far ahead that it's a good thing that he's only going to having one rally in Montana so he can help senators?
No, my curveball's not that good. I just shoot straight. And he's going out there to my fastball's pretty good, though. My fastball says he's going out there to help folks. Also, J.D. Vance has been on the road this week. And it's also J.D. Vance has been on the road by himself this week. He's been able to go and sort of become that vice presidential candidate without having other rallies that may be competing. And it gives, some of the voters and some of the media a chance to focus on Vance and how he's doing on the stump as well. Now, look, I think in a campaign, you would love to see Donald Trump out there. You're going to see that more and more. I do know that they've been doing media, a lot of interviews, fundraising, those kind of things, which are all important to a campaign as well. While the media just, sit in starry-eyed amazement at Vice President Harris.
Well, to be fair, we put up the split screen every time we have it, right? Harris event, Trump event. There just isn't often a Trump event to put up. Harris has had more events this week than Trump has had since the RNC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look,
I covered Donald Trump in 2016, and it was like it was trying to chase after the Energizer Bunny, going from rally to rally to rally to rally. Now it's like trying to keep up with a turtle. I mean, you can take a break, you can have a Coke.
Yeah.
How is this guy ready to barnstorm? We were all talking about how this is like a Joe Biden-esque campaign.
Yeah, no, I would disagree with that in the sense of, look, also the Trump campaign is also in the last couple of weeks has also repositioned the campaign strategy, going from a Joe Biden that is, basically, we saw in decline, was not going to be the candidate that the fall campaign was looking at. And you've all of a sudden had to readjust now to a different candidate, Vice President Harris, who still has all the same baggage, but presents a different angle. She brought in back excitement to the Democratic Party. I'm not denying where the polls are. In fact, I was been saying for months that this race would have been tight all the way to November, even with Joe Biden propped up. So, look, I think it's a strategic move right now. Do I, agree with it? Not. Look, he's been president of the United States. Neither one of us have.
So you're saying the lack of rallies while Kamala Harris is getting all this attention is a strategic pause, not a strategic blunder?
No, I think it's just part of a campaign. I think, again, you can look into the future. If we were looking at this 8 weeks, 10 weeks from now or election day and saying, was it good or was it bad? You make the determination then. But when you're doing fundraising, when you're doing the media, when you're doing those things, and also remember, Vice President Harris had to be out this week. She's just introduced a governor in which 80% of American people had no idea who he was.
Right, but we're told all the time that Donald Trump is the greatest manipulator of the media of all time, which in large part he has proven true. Yeah. While Tim Walz is being introduced to America and Republicans are complaining sort of minute by minute about how much coverage Harris is getting, Harris is the one making news. Donald Trump is holed up at Mar-a-Lago. I'm just perplexed by this decision.
Yeah, I mean, is it different than you have seen maybe in a different time? Maybe so. But also at the same point in time, as I've said, it's not been, complete radio silence here. There has been the campaign working with J.D. Vance. And you had the press conference yesterday, which again highlights the fact that the choreographed part of the Harris-Walz campaign is that she can't speak outside a teleprompter. She's got the teleprompters are her reading glasses. She can't do anything without them.
Well, so far she has not. I won't speak to whether she can or not, but at least so far she has not tried. Congressman Doug
she tried
Collins,
one time on the tarmac last weekend. It was a train wreck.
That didn't work out probably as well as they had hoped. I think reasonable people can agree. Congressman, it's good to see you, sir. Have a great weekend.
Hey, it's always good to be with you too, Lou. Take care.
Yes, sir. Kamala Harris has a new ad promising help to the middle class. Well, what she says she will do differently than the past 3 years. All right, there we go. The warm-up act in Glendale, Arizona, outside of Phoenix. Live pictures of the Harris-Walz rally. If Harris sticks to her standard stump speech, which she has been, strictly speaking and sticking to the teleprompter, she will not mention Joe Biden's name. And she'll likely tout her new plan for the middle class. At least that's what her new ad is about.
She grew up in a middle-class home. She was the daughter of a working mom. And she worked at McDonald's while she got her degree. Kamala Harris knows what it's like to be middle class. Being president is about who you fight for. And she's fighting for people like you.
All right, the ad goes on to promise lower costs for health care and housing. All very laudable goals. Our guest last night pointed out Harris talks about the issues of the day as though she isn't already the vice president who has told us before she's proud of their record.
I wish I understood it, because in her speech, she was talking about on day one. I'm like, on day one? This is like day 1,000 of you. It was the Biden-Harris administration, and now you're acting like on day one of my presidency, I'm going to put the middle class on the agenda. I'm going to put the economy back on the agenda. I was like, wait a minute.
Lauren Wright is with us, associate research scholar, Princeton University. Denny Salas is with us, longtime Democratic political consultant. Welcome. Thank you. Denny, start with you. 4 weeks ago, we were told the biggest problem for Democrats is that they were not talking about Biden-Harris accomplishments enough. What happened?
Look, obviously,
things have changed.
Things have changed, obviously. So, like you mentioned earlier, 17 days ago, Kamala Harris is now the Democratic nominee for president of the United States. So now it's her time to lead. Now, what happened before is, look, first of all...
What do we make of the fact, though, that she literally does not say his name?
Well, I think that's going to change. They already have a planned event that's going to have President Biden speak with Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz. So it's not like they're going to run away from him, because he is part of her, obviously. He allowed her to raise her up as a new VP, as a vice president candidate when he was running in 2020. Now, as vice president, I think what she's going to have to highlight were a lot of the successes that they've actually had as...
So we're going to start hearing about those.
We are, absolutely. And look, we have something to be proud of. Look, we still have historically low unemployment. We still have jobs figures that are very, very good looking. Inflation is actually going down. Immigration has been going down.
Talking about the numbers. Okay. Yeah, so this was a new line. Yeah. This wasn't the standard stump speech. This was the UAW, the United Auto Workers event. Sure. Yesterday. Take a listen.
We want to recognize the right all people have to freedom and liberty to make choices, especially those that are about heart and home, and not have their government telling them what to do.
Lauren, she's standing next to a guy who had a COVID-19 snitch line.
Yes.
And administration, the Biden-Harris administration, that threw people out of the military if they didn't get the COVID vaccine.
Yes.
And there was discussion about keeping people at home. There was also discussion of banning people from social media if they said the wrong thing. Has in the minds of the swing voters, because that's all that matters, all things Biden-Harris that were bad been absolved?
No, because voters are still very angry about the Biden-Harris administration. And I don't understand this pivot to liberty. What's the difference between that and democracy? What about the freedom to choose your own presidential candidate if you're a Democrat? What about how they were advocating basically for a shadow government where we didn't know if Biden was in decline or not, and we don't know how much Harris knew as this equal, strong, historic partner behind the scenes? A lot of those issues, I get the abortion argument, Republicans, that's the worst issue for them. But on a lot of these other things, Americans perceive Republicans to be the party of liberty and freedom. And I'll just say very quickly, I also don't understand the pivot away from democracy. I thought the country was ending. I thought if Trump was elected, we were all in danger of losing American democracy. He's still the candidate. Is that no longer true? I don't get it.
Denny?
Look, it's a different candidate. I do believe that.
So does that mean that Donald Trump's no longer a threat to democracy?
I still think as a Democrat and on this panel, I would say that, yes, I do believe that. But do I think that should be the overarching message for the Harris campaign? The answer is no. I think you focus, just like James Carville would always say, it's the economy, stupid. You focus on the kitchen table issues.
Well, as Bill Clinton would say, I mean, to be fair, Lauren, right, as Bill Clinton would say, elections are about the future. And somehow Kamala Harris and her team, may be part of the Obama team, figured that out, right? They figured out the messaging wasn't working. Threat to democracy wasn't working. Immigration, Trump 52-46 over Harris. Economy 51-48. Trump. Middle East 51-47 over Harris. Role on the world stage 49-50 Harris. Preserving democracy, Harris wins that by 7. Abortion, I'm actually surprised by. Harris only wins by 15 points. Normally, it's more. Denny, what's the plan for Democrats when the sugar high wears off, the earned media wears off, and we go back to swing states where it's the economy, stupid, and the economy's still not doing well?
Look, the economy is doing pretty well. I think that is not true when you look at when the unemployment rate is still doing well. You have wages that have actually continued to rise. Now, what they're going to do is now focus on policy. I believe that it's been a purpose strategy by the Harris campaign.
To not talk about policy at all.
Right now, yeah, because if you think about it.
She haven't had to.
Exactly. She hasn't had to, but also she just locked up the nomination. When you have, typically, when somebody's running for president, you have months to prepare. That means that you are vetting, you're actually going through the process of developing your policy platform. She had 3 weeks. I think
you study this with voters real quick. How long does Kamala Harris have before, if she does not actually present any new policy proposals, voters start naturally going back to thinking about what her policies were in the past and what they were in 2019 when she ran for president as the most liberal senator in America?
I would say no time, and I was telling Denny this in the green room. I think
that's where the good conversations happen.
If she does not define herself and we don't find out what these policies are and if they're different than Biden, then Trump is totally free to fill in the blanks. Her opponent will define her if she doesn't, and that's a huge risk.
Interestingly enough, today he dropped a video, 2.5 minutes, of exactly some of those old policies in her own words. It's great to see you. Thank you. Welcome to the program. First time won't be the last time. It's good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Tim Walz was picked because of his cable news appearances. In particular, one he was very good at it was, why isn't he making any cable news appearances now that he's the VP nominee?
But we've said it, Donald Trump's going to take it backwards. We aren't going back. We're not going back.
It's Tim Walz. Doesn't look like he's on the teleprompter. Pretty good on the stump, better on his feet. He's with the UAW Hall. He's doing pretty good. That was this week in Detroit. It's the type of fire and passion the Harris campaign enlisted Walz to bring. There's just one problem with that speech, though. Nobody heard it. Walz's speech wasn't televised by any of the cable networks. 48 hours after his first appearance on the ticket, Walz's stump speech was like a big tree falling in the deep woods of Minnesota. Walz got picked in part because of his ability to deliver on that, especially on cable news in hot, unscripted moments.
These are weird people on the other side. They want to take books away. They want to be in your exam room. That's what it comes down to. These are weird ideas. Listen to them speak. Listen how they talk about things. A robber baron real estate guy and a venture capitalist trying to tell us they understand who we are. They don't know who we are.
But since Kamala Harris isn't doing any interviews, we've documented that very well, day 19, Walz can't either. NewsNation contributor, founding editor of Mediaite, Colby Hall, with us now. Look, it has been incredible what Kamala Harris, the ride she has been on.
Stunning.
The fact now that nobody's taking her speeches live anymore, nobody's taking Walz's speeches anymore, is that the end of the sugar high?
I'd like to think so. I think, there's this honeymoon period that the media has really sort of leaned into, and I think it's largely a novelty thing. Shiny new toy. You have the DNC coming up, so I think the sugar high will probably continue. But it's crazy that, It's like hosting a cable news show. You book this great guest that throws out great sound bites, and you're not going to let him speak. Tim Walz, you could argue that cable news hit was probably the most consequential one in a personal political career than any in history. And because Kamala's not doing media, it's sort of like you have this attack dog that you keep in a muzzle.
Right.
On.
Literally, there's a muzzle on him, and it's one of his best. And look, to be fair to Tim Walz, he would go on adversarial cable shows. He was good at it. He enjoyed it.
Right.
And that he was so good off prompter and off script in a way that Kamala Harris just is not.
Well, it puts in stark relief. It shines a light on the fact that, look, Kamala Harris has been way more authentic and genuine and extemporaneous since she started. But you're right, she's giving the same
What do you mean she's been way more extemporaneous?
The first appearance in the sort of Biden-Harris-Wilmington, that was off the cuff. And honestly, it was so brand new.
No, it wasn't. There was a teleprompter there.
No, the day after, when she was was talking off the cuff. But nonetheless, she's giving the same speech over and over again. And they need to pivot to something. And I think it reveals there's a lack of confidence that she won't sort of stumble and word salad and say, I think she's improved a ton over the last 3.5 years, but she needs to take questions from tough press. She needs to sit down with Leland Vittert and ask tough but fair questions. And until that happens, you can't.
Until then, Tim Walz doesn't get to say this on CNN.
Do you worry that this is somehow playing into Trump's hands, like what Marco Rubio tried to do?
Yeah, no, it's not a name calling or tagging him with it. It's an observation, and I didn't come up with it. Look, Donald Trump is a threat to all those things, but we somehow put it in there that he had this power that there wasn't anything we could do about. This is a tool. I'm a teacher, and you're trying to get things in. This is the emperor's wearing no clothes.
Colby, at what point does Kamala Harris look like the emperor who wears no clothes if she cannot interact with voters, with the media, without a teleprompter?
It's a great question. In fact, I wrote a column about this yesterday and said that, some people across the partisan spectrum have been calling for her to, do interviews. It's been remarkably silent on progressive media and central media. And so I think that moment where it starts to shift into, okay, this is a thing now, I think we're entering that. And so she said that she's going to do an interview before Labor Day.
End of the month.
But that's, it's absurd. And by the way, appearing on MSNBC primetime doesn't count. That's...
She won't even do that, which is stunning. Trump Vance pressers this week. Trump influencer, streamer Aiden Ross, that kind of doesn't count. That's going on MSNBC. Vance press gaggle on a plane to an event in PA. That counts. Vance interview with Semaphore. Fine. Vance presser in Eau Claire. Vance presser in Detroit. Trump phoner with Fox and Friends. Nah. Trump presser in Mar-a-Lago. That was a real press conference.
It was, good for him and good for him for doing NABJ, because those were two things where he was combative. He took tough questions. I will say that I think the Harris campaign loved that he did that press conference, because that pushed off the news cycle the Tim Walz military service thing, which was bad news for the Harris campaiin. And so I think
it wasn't even. It was going to.
Yeah. Well, they're out there doing it. Harris and Walz are not.
Right. That is there it is. Colby, you cover the media. How much of what's happening is the exact same thing what happened with Joe Biden, which is that reporters and news organizations would not talk about Joe Biden's health. They wouldn't talk about how he wasn't doing press conferences. They wouldn't talk about his agenda, because if they did, the White House would pull access. In Kamala Harris has reporters on her plane, and they get off the record meetings with Harris, and you know that if they start crowing about a lack of access, then Harris pulls the access they have.
It's the same exact dynamic. Eugene Daniels, he writes for Politico. He's the president of the White House Correspondents Association. He is lockstep with the Harris campaign. And so every news that comes out, it comes from him in a way that suggests someone's got access. Someone is playing ball. And, that level of access is elitist, and it stinks. And it's not consistent with journalistic standards, and we shouldn't accept it.
I have to wonder, at some point it's going to be a decision by the network executives,
right?
Not by the reporters. All right. Good to see you, Colby.
Good man.
Thank you as always. You can read more about all of this in War Notes. That's our free email newsletter. Comes out every day at 4 p.m. It gives you our thoughts on the most important stories of the day. It is free. You can reply with your thoughts and also connect with us on social media at Leland Vittert, Instagram, and Twitter. I still call it Twitter. We read them all. Like Renita, who said of the Harris rally a couple of days ago, the visual on stage today was so very different from Trump's stages. Whether or not there is any, it said love, family, not hate and fear. Normal. It's a great point, Renita. Campaigns message about everything. Clearly, the message Harris wants to send you is getting through. Jack writes, the choice of Harris and Shapiro would have made a team of a black woman and a Jew to run the country. I really don't believe your fellow white brothers could stand for such a team. There would be outrage from this racist nation. Really, Jack? Really? I don't know. I happen to think a lot more of America and Americans. We elected a black president in 2008 by an overwhelming majority, and he got an awful lot of the white vote. A Jewish vice presidential candidate won the popular vote in 2000. Elections are about addition and how great America is. Jim writes, you always present issues and people with your old Fox network twist. I wonder how you can declare your network to be the fairest on TV. This is not only ungrammatical, but it makes me laugh to hear you say it nightly. Well, first things first, Jim, thank you for watching. And you are entitled to your opinion, but not your own facts. Your email contained not a single instance when we were incorrect or unfair or misrepresented the truth. So simply disagreeing is not enough. David writes to War Notes, I enjoy your show very much. One bit of advice, please don't show campaign speeches. They're always the same, and the banality is mind-numbing. If you have a highlight or two, that would be great. And David, it is a fair point. We always try to balance and have the desire to be fair, both the candidates and to you, the viewers. You deserve to hear directly from the candidates, especially when they're saying something new. And you are right, the stump speeches now are getting awfully predictable. A few debates would be nice, wouldn't they? So subscribe to War Notes for free, warnotes.com. Please keep your thoughts and replies coming. Clearly, we read them all. Donald Trump is visibly triggered by questions about his crowd size. You don't need the audio. What his body language says about the state of this very close race.
Are you worried at all about the size of Harris's crowds?
Oh, give me a break. Listen, I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. You didn't report it. I'm so glad you asked. What did she have yesterday? 2,000 people? If I ever had 2,000 people, you'd say my campaign is finished.
Donald Trump was calm and even-keeled for a full 17 minutes of his press conference yesterday. That is until he was asked about Kamala Harris drawing bigger crowds. You did not need the sound up to see it bothered him. The behavior expert, Robin Barnhart, is here. Robin, good to see you. When that visceral reaction, it was almost an uncontrolled reaction right at the top when he takes his hands and then throws them down. What does that mean?
Well, when you see someone respond like that, anytime you say anything, you have to take in all the circumstances that are happening. So in addition to him being ways into the meeting, he also is probably tired. He's recovering from a lot of things, and he's frustrated. He has been ignored on many of the things that he would like to be addressed. So take all of that as the context. And yes, when he responds, he does respond with a little bit of frustration. But then he goes in, very much like Trump does, and addresses the issues as he sees them. But this is a very uncommon thing, and I would put it in the circumstances of him being shot at it recently, and so many things changing. And
there does seem to be a stress level that has risen, and you make it very fairly and validly. Kamala Harris, for the first time yesterday, had a very brief interaction with the press. It was hard to hear because the engines of Air Force Two were on, number one. And it was, shall we say, brief, but it was. Take a listen.
She's like, I'm coming.
The sunglasses, like it's the Joe Biden look, okay, fine. But the what do you got? Is there a way to see if that's real bravado or false bravado?
I don't know that I would say that it's false. I think she's walking up with confidence. And wearing the sunglasses, I think that's just circumstantial. So removing them as she gets up and ready to speak would be a normal thing. But she walks up with confidence.
Okay, fair enough. J.D. Vance, sort of one of the interesting moments that we saw this week was in Wisconsin. And to make the point that he was taking questions from the press and Kamala Harris was not and still hasn't had any kind of meaningful interaction, walked across the tarmac from his plane to her plane. Take a listen.
Hey guys, how are you? Good. I just wanted to check out my future plane, but I also wanted to go say hello to the vice president and ask her why Kamala Harris why does she refuse to answer questions from the media? And I also thought that the press gaggle following her might get a little lonely. I at least have enough respect for you all and for the American people you report to come and talk to you.
Thoughts?
Well, the same as with Kamala, except I would say even more so. He is walking up with definite authority and with confidence in the circumstance that he is putting himself into. I think he's taking advantage of the opportunity to put himself in that environment in front of the plane that he may one day be flying in. And so he is using that in a wise way. And he is doing what we wish that Kamala would do, too, is to addressing the press. And he's doing it with confidence.
The one thing I think fairly to say about J.D. Vance is he has never lacked in confidence, at least all the times that I've been covering him. Robin, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. It's coming up on 8 p.m. Eastern here. That is 6 p.m. in Arizona and in Montana, where we await both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Stage filling up there for Donald Trump. Just if we want to talk about crowd size, not anywhere close to what we were seeing in Arizona. That's pretty interesting. Gabby Giffords and Mark Kelly, the possible VP pick, passed over VP pick, now introducing Kamala Harris at the rally. I'll tell you Monday if she says anything off prompter. Have a great weekend.